Hey guys, good morning. I am so excited for our live. I'm sorry I am a little late. I didn't announce this live, so I was like, oh no, I need to get myself ready and get ready to rumble. So I'm a little, got some sleepy eyes going on. But I'm super excited for your questions as always. I know you guys, always send me DMs, and sometimes I don't really check my DMs anymore. My assistant checks my DMs and will relay any information to me. So I know a lot of questions come in, but unfortunately I don't have the time to always sit there and answer your guys' questions in the DMs. So I'm always so happy to be able to spend this time with you so that you guys can ask these questions during my lives and we can actually chat about them. I think it's better to relay information this way than, in writing. Sometimes things don't always translate through. Hi, Ellie. Throw your questions at me. I have quite a few that were asked in the submission box yesterday, so if you guys run out of questions, I'll pull some of those up as well. There's quite a few good ones. Corey asked, in your opinion, is cradle cap on babies dandruff on moms most likely from a kidney detox issue? So I would say, and this is always like speculation because I don't know the situation, but anytime there's like a dandruff or some type of scalp infection specifically, like a lot of people struggle with like seborrheic dermatitis on their scalp, and that usually has to do with some type of fungus or bacterial infection. And so I think that does translate to the child very often. If the mother has yeast or bacterial issues, that usually is passed via a vaginal birth, right? We kind of pass our microbiome onto our children. And so that could possibly be it, but not always. There are other things, and I will ask one of my good friends. She's so good at she has a wonderful little girl. She's my niece, and she is so good with children. She knows everything about kids. And so I will ask her if she's kind of heard anything through the grapevine about what the underlying factors of cradle cap. But I would speculate it has something to do with gut issues, and probably not. Gut issues always affect detoxification and the kidneys, but I wouldn't say that's it. That's the thing. It probably is more of a mixture of a microbiome stuff. Hair looking beautiful. Love the wild waves. Thank you. I've always rocked the bed head. I've discovered I'm pregnant at 3 weeks. Can I use bioidentical progesterone to be sure I'll have enough? Congratulations, Estelle. I can't believe that. That's so exciting. Yeah, so actually, of course, I recommend you asking your doctor, but I will give you a warning. You don't want to stop using progesterone. If you use progesterone while you were getting pregnant, and that's kind of what you think was a factor in you getting pregnant, you definitely don't want to stop using it the first trimester, because during the first trimester, our placenta's production of progesterone is kind of shaky, especially if we already had low progesterone, and that's when the likelihood of miscarriages tends to pop up the most. And so we really want to make sure we have enough progesterone during that first trimester. A lot of times during the second trimester and the third trimester, the placenta begins to actually make us enough progesterone. And usually for a very healthy woman, the placenta will make her progesterone all cycle long, or all pregnancy long. But for somebody that struggles with progesterone production, usually the first trimester is it's not a good idea to stop taking progesterone. I wasn't planning. It's a surprise and stress because it was probably my first ovulation since a while. No, that's something that you can't, sometimes you can't plan a pregnancy, and it's a blessing in that way. So you shouldn't stress about it. You shouldn't worry about it. That's amazing. It was supposed to happen. And so the best thing you could do now is just take care of your body, make sure you're nourishing yourself, and let your body do its thing. Honestly, we can rest in the fact that our body was literally made for this. So it's something to really celebrate. Thanks. It's since I stopped diet and followed Fully Nourished. Yeah, lots of people in Fully Nourished are dropping like flies, man. You guys are getting knocked up. What would you recommend for someone that is very bloated and gassy for 5 days straight? This started after a day of bad eating and a stomach bug was going around the daycare she works at. For a kid. So it's one of those things where I would maybe do your research about activated charcoal. You don't want to give them too much, but usually a little bit of activated charcoal can be helpful. If she's bloated and gassy, some mothers will actually give their children enemas. That's something that I will probably do if my kid's feeling a little bit sick. And that's been, a remedy for children for hundreds of years. I'm also thinking I don't like giving kids supplements or anything like that. And so, sometimes like probiotic rich foods, lots of vitamin C, like orange juice, and just kind of staying away from like the things that are harder to digest, like wheat. Sometimes doing like a little bit of baking soda and magnesium in a bath or Epsom salts in a bath can be helpful. But yeah, just the basics. But activated charcoal really does tend to help kind of when anyone's sick. And so I've never used it on a kid because I don't have a kid, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. You just would have to do your own research and kind of manipulate the dose. But yeah, the activated charcoal absorbs those endotoxins, and it can be really, really, it can kind of mitigate symptoms, especially if they're digestive. Estelle asked how much progesterone, and I would just continue with the same dose that you're taking. Like, I wouldn't really mess with anything too much, and would kind of just stick with what you're doing. You mentioned eating an apple every day. Is the skin important, or should they be peeled? It doesn't really matter. The skin can sometimes be hard to digest, so if you find you're getting a little bit like grumbly in your stomach from it, then I would say peel it, but I usually will just eat the apple straight up. It's just important that it's organic. Apples are really heavily sprayed in pesticides. Would you mind telling me what stops estrogen aromatizing in men? Thank you. Well, their elevated testosterone levels tend to be the cause. It's just less likely for men their bodies don't have the tendency to have elevated estrogen levels because they don't need it. Now, that's not true for modern men anymore. Modern men tend to aromatize lots of estrogen. If you've ever seen guys that look like they have a little bit more of a girly figure, meaning they hold weight in like their hips and their thighs, they almost look curvy in that sense, that is an estrogenic man. Or man boobies, you've seen man boobs, you've seen beer bellies. Those are all estrogenic symptoms on a man. So that's something to keep in mind, but their bodies aren't just going to automatically aromatize into estrogen unless they're under a lot of stress or their physiology is kind of broken down. They have metabolic issues. All the issues I talk about here do apply to men as well. They're a little bit more resilient to stress, but not to the point where they don't experience it. So I kind of want you to think of it that way. Like, men are not going to just automatically aromatize, but they're definitely they can aromatize into estrogen for sure. It's just their physiology is not as, they don't have as much estrogen. They don't manufacture as much estrogen. So they're usually going to manufacture estrogen under stress, or if they're being exposed to lots of estrogens, for example, like in their environment. Cage-free, free-range, organic, homogenized, grass-fed, etc. There's so many. What is most important for dairy, eggs, and meat? Why is it important? Hubby gets irked every time I buy more expensive eggs. So you are only as healthy as what you eat, right? And the animal is the same way. The animal is only as healthy as what it eats. And so you have to keep in mind that different animals pretend chickens were roaming in the wild. What would they eat? What are they naturally inclined to in the wild? When they are trapped in a cage and only given one thing to eat, they will eat that thing to survive, but that doesn't mean that that is their biological food. And I'm talking about soy and corn feed. Now, keep in mind that chickens are now fed GMO corn and GMO soy. Most human beings are going to be sensitive to corn and soy as it is, not to mention genetically modified corn and soy. So here this chicken is now very, very sick because he's not eating his biological diet, and now he's he is producing eggs that are also sickly. If you've ever seen a yolk that's like a light yellow color, that's not a normal color for a yolk. We're used to that, but a normal color for a yolk is a deep orange color. That shows the vitamins and nutrients in an egg. So you're looking for chickens that are able to roam in the sunlight, because remember, chickens need about 14 hours of sunlight a day to produce eggs. And so if they don't have that, they're most likely getting their fake sun from artificial heat lamps. And then you're looking for a chicken that's allowed to roam, because that allows it to actually pick up bugs. Remember, chickens are not vegetarians. They're actually omnivores. They need both insects and also they can be supplemented with feed, but they tend to, when they forage, they're going to forage for insects. And so a healthy chicken is an omnivore. And there's a lot of eggs that will say, you'll notice, vegetarian fed, and I'm like, that's not necessarily a good thing. So you're looking for a pasture raised egg. You're looking for that bright orange yolk, and I honestly think they are worth the money. Now, Vital Farms tends to be the most popular pastured egg, and they do feed their chickens non-GMO soy feed. So that is one thing about them that I kind of am irked about, but they are a much better option than like free range eggs, you know. And of course, do the best you can with what you can afford. I still am kind of be on the lookout for a farm around here that does sell eggs. I know there are a lot of people in La Cresta that sell eggs, and so I need to like go and search around, but you just kind of want to be concerned with what the chicken's eating. And then when it comes to dairy, what was the cow eating? That's going to totally affect the hormones and the fats in the milk. If they're being fed corn, remember, cows only eat grass. They're only supposed to eat grass. If they're eating corn, they have to be fed antibiotics so that they do not die, because that corn ferments in their 3 stomachs. Their digestive tract is very complicated, and it's meant for grasses. And so when they're eating corn and when they're eating soy and whatever else they're feeding them, they're getting very, very sick. Their guts are really messed up, and so they have to be fed antibiotics in order to actually survive. And so when you buy grass-fed meat or grass-fed, grass-finished meat or pasture-raised meat, that means that cow is foraging for grass or they're being supplemented with hay, and that is what they're meant to eat biologically. And it goes the same for their milk. If they're being fed corn, their milk is going to have lots of PUFAs, because remember, grain feed equals high amounts of omega-6 and polyunsaturated fats. Grains themselves are very rich in polyunsaturated fats. And so when you feed cows and pigs grains, a lot of their fat and the fat that they produce in the milk does become polyunsaturated, because their body is going to make itself up of what it's being fed. The building blocks that the cow's being given is what's going to make up its tissues and its milk. And so you want to make sure that that cow is getting the building blocks it needs so that that translates into its meat and its milk. Or you're going to have a problem with, why is this causing so much inflammation? Well, the fat structure is different because of the food the cow is eating. So if that makes sense, don't get really concerned with labels. You're looking at fundamentally, okay, what is a chicken supposed to eat? Okay, that's the type of egg I want. And sometimes that takes us having to do a little searching, a little researching, make sure we talk to our farmers, make sure we know what's going on, or look up the companies to make sure they're not using these weird labels, because they're not regulated. You know, you'll see like free fed, free roam, you know, you'll see all these weird references, and they mean nothing. You need to actually, as a smart consumer, figure it out for yourself, and don't buy into labels. You are looking at, what is my animal eating? If it's not eating what it's supposed to be eating, or it's eating something very close to what it's supposed to be eating, that's what I want to be doing. And of course, you're not going to be able to find the perfect meat and the perfect milk all the time, and that's when you kind of just say, I'm doing the best I can. What causes high cholesterol, and are there natural ways to lower it? You don't want to, so the question is always, why is my cholesterol high, and never, how do I lower my cholesterol? The body's really wise. It doesn't just like be like, oops, oopsie, cholesterol's out of control, oops. Your cholesterol is high for a very specific reason, and most of the time it's actually protective. But 9 times out of 10, people have high cholesterol because they have thyroid issues. You need thyroid hormone, free T3, vitamin A, and red light in order to convert cholesterol into all other hormones. So pregnenolone is that mother hormone, and so cholesterol turns into pregnenolone, and then pregnenolone turns into cortisol, progesterone, and then DHEA, which then turns into estrogen and testosterone. So you have to understand that if cholesterol is high, it's most likely having a very difficult time converting from cholesterol into what it's supposed to be converting into. And I always encourage, if cholesterol is elevated and you can't figure it out, go get a full thyroid panel or start taking your temps and pulses. Matcha is good even if we have adrenal issues. Thanks. I have a problem with drinking matcha every day because it is super rich in fluoride. People don't understand that tea itself, the only benefit that tea provides, at least caffeinated tea, is actually the caffeine. Matcha is... or green tea leaves in general are a very high natural source of fluoride. And this is a big problem for people who already have suppressed metabolic function and thyroid function, because fluoride is thyroid suppressive. It's also pretty hard on the gut and the liver. And so if you're having a problem with metabolic issues, your stress is high, damaging your thyroid is not going to help that. And I don't care about the occasional matcha. It's not like I'm the matcha police, but if you're drinking matcha every day or starting your day with matcha every day, that's probably not going to serve you as much as you think it is. Just because it's a popular health food drink, I always read between the lines, and it's not always a better option than caffeine or coffee. I just finished the book you recommended, Hair Like a Fox, because hair loss is my worst symptom. Now I'm scared of plant fats. Thoughts? Yeah, that's what I talk about here constantly. Plant fats, you're an animal or a mammal, and you're not a plant. So plant fats are very inflammatory. It's my 31-year-old daughter. She works at the daycare. Oh, okay. Yeah. Activated charcoal is a really good option for a grumbly tummy. Don't really give babe supplements, but thoughts on magnesium flake baths for 1-year-old or Epsom salts. I think that's something that you should just kind of do the research on your own. I wouldn't go crazy with the Epsom salts. I would do like a really low amount. So anything with a child that you do, or anything with an adult that you do, you always want to like cut it in an eighth for a baby. And you always want to be really conservative. But yeah, you don't want to do too much because that will overwhelm their body. But yeah, Epsom salt baths in small amounts usually are okay. Usually. But there's always exceptions to every rule. When I've taken charcoal capsules, I get some intense cramps. Why? Because they absorb a lot of the toxins and bacteria that are in the gut. And so a lot of times it's sometimes die off, or you're actually clearing out bacteria from the colon and the small intestine, which is not always a good thing. But usually it is if you get symptoms from activated charcoal. Thoughts on circumcision? Seems so wrong, no judgment. It's one of those things that when you don't have children, you don't think about it, but I have friends that have children, and so we've had that discussion, and it does, in my opinion, it kind of does seem so wrong. It is a societal norm, and, it's kind of one of those things where everyone just does it, but just because everyone just cuts a part of their child's penis off doesn't mean that it's right. And I think that's sometimes the problem with our culture. It's just like it's what they say to do, or to prevent infection. And it's like, what if I said like I'm gonna cut off part of your vagina to prevent infection? Like, it makes no common sense, but we do it anyways. So in my opinion, and there's again no judgment, and I honestly have never made like a conclusion on it, but I do kind of think it is a little off. Like, even in my gut, I would have a very hard time watching my newborn child get mutilated. Hi Jessica, how are you? I'm good, Lynn. Thank you so much for asking. This is going to be a weird question because there are many things you can do for stress, but is there one thing you would recommend for extreme stress, such as a death, breakup, etc.? Yeah, if you could swing it, a weekend away, a weekend to do something that you've always wanted to do that you didn't do for whatever reason, but for a complete and utter change of scenery and a complete and utter just getting yourself out of your immediate environment and kind of escaping, in the sense of just like, I'm just going to leave my life for about 2 or 3 days and just let myself do whatever. I know when I am going through something like extremely traumatic, I usually will take off to the beach and I will if I can swing a night away, I will. And I will just fill up my time with doing whatever the heck I want. I'll read, I'll go to the nearest cafe and just chill and people watch. I'll walk on the beach. I'll take myself out to dinner. I'll have a Netflix binge in a nice comfy bed, and then I'll wake up in the morning and take myself out to breakfast and slowly and leisurely sip on my coffee. You know what I mean? Like, I take myself out of my environment and I indulge, and not indulge in the sense of like, you know, you're binging, but you indulge yourself in just allowing and giving yourself permission to escape for a bit. Turn off your phone, don't even go near it unless it's an emergency, and just enjoy yourself, get away. And I know it's gonna be different for every person, but for me, that is like the ultimate luxurious like couple of days, to just kind of like separate myself. But that's probably my biggest thing. Something like that is so incredibly, it just like completely is food for the soul. And a lot of times when you come back to reality or your real life, you feel so much more refreshed to be able to take it on. Like, you're seeing things in a perspective. And a lot of times when I'm away, I'll take a lot of time to like journal and pray and contemplate, but not like, you know, marinate in my like misery. Like, you know, I just want to be, you know, restoring my soul in a sense. But yeah, that's probably my biggest thing that I would do, is just separate yourself for a minute. And I know that's like a weird thing, but you know, there's no amount of detox baths or, you know, like meditation that is going to really fix that, but there's always going to be an ache there. And so once you get back from your little reset, then you feel refreshed enough to, okay, it's a change of routine, right? A change of pace. And so you're able to kind of break your more maybe like bad routines. A lot of times when we go through a traumatic event, we tend to like get into like just a funk. And so when you break your routine, boom, just by getting away for a moment, you can get back and you feel refreshed enough to take on a new, more positive, more body-honoring routine. How are you doing, Jessica? What would be one thing you would want to improve on your health? Yeah, that's like a good question. For me, like I've always, like I guess like my weakness has always been my digestive system. Always had gut issues since I was a very little girl, like since I was like really 3 years old. And so for me, whenever I get under stress, I tend to, like my digestion tends to be the first thing that is struggling. And so right now I'm dealing with a little bit of like small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. I'm working on that. And the way that I'm working on that is mostly just balancing my minerals, making sure my minerals get super balanced, and being really not careful with my diet, but definitely more body honoring with my diet, a lot more fruit, a lot less starch, and really trying to de-stress. And then I'm experimenting with a few antibacterial supplements. Do you know what can cause bad armpit smell? Yeah, keep in mind that your armpits are the way that the nasties inside get outside, and so it's normal for us to sweat in our armpits. It's very important. If we use antiperspirants or toxic deodorants, that's the first thing that is going to cause an armpit smell, but most of the time it's the body actually detoxifying. If we stink, there's junk inside that needs to get out. That is what's inside your body. And so, yeah, I mean, it's usually going to be bacteria. Sometimes you're detoxifying heavy metals, those types of things. But yeah, I mean, it could be a few different things. You kind of want to keep in mind that it's not necessarily bad to have stinky pits. What can low MMA mean? Also high B12. Usually if B12 is elevated, there's usually gut issues at play. I'm not sure what you mean by MMA. But again, individual lab results really don't mean very much, and they tend to throw you off the trail of what's really wrong. What's your fave B vitamin? You know, I really like biotin, and I also really like vitamin B1. It tends to be very, very helpful for most people, but vitamin B3 or niacinamide is actually really powerful as well. Hi, Jessica. I was wondering what your knowledge about gluten intolerance and PCOS. I did a DNA test to show my genes cannot handle gluten, but not celiac. Do you know the connection? It's just that women with PCOS have really a big metabolic breakdown, which means all the cells are struggling. And so gluten is very hard to digest with an imbalanced body. And so it's better to avoid it anyways with polycystic ovarian syndrome. But yeah, most people in the modern world can't handle modern wheat. I highly recommend checking out my latest post with the picture of the bread in it to understand that a little more. What about high cholesterol in men? I was asking my dad, who's in his 60s. Yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing. Usually it's a lot of stress. I highly recommend, I reposted a post by Isaac Pullman in my stories. He was just talking about this very subject about cholesterol being high and what it means. It's usually driven by oxidation of cholesterol. So remember, cholesterol plays a very important role. It is a precursor to hormones. It's how your body makes hormones. But when we have an excessive amount of polyunsaturated free fatty acids in the bloodstream, lots of iron toxicity, it will oxidize the cholesterol, and that's the problem. That's when we start to get oxidized high cholesterol. And so it's really a whole body issue. It's, being exposed to polyunsaturated fats and free fatty acids, lots of iron, and focusing on everything that I talk about here really does help lower cholesterol because you're lowering that oxidation. You're taking stress off the body. Thoughts on the blood type diet? I don't really think it has any merit because I've seen people that are type O that, need something different than people that are type A. And so I just don't think it really has any weight. Is there anything that helps quickly with hirsutism while working on the root cause? There are some people that say that applying progesterone, like oil, directly on the areas affected has helped them. I've never tried that myself, but there are people that do say that it has helped a lot, and then taking progesterone has helped. But really working on the root cause is the biggest thing because hair growth is so internal. It's like, you could try all you might with things that are kind of quick fixes, but a lot of times they won't work, and so you become really frustrated. But there's no hurt in trying. We've been trying to get pregnant for over a year with no luck. Periods are normal to the very day. Is something to be concerned about because periods are normal? Do you know if you're ovulating? That's my biggest questions. I don't really care if periods are normal. There are women who have regular periods and don't ovulate or have very little progesterone. There are also women who are trying to get pregnant who are eating less than what's necessary for like a 4-year-old little girl. And so usually my first question is, are you eating above 2,000 calories a day? What type of exercise are you doing? Are you over exercising? Have you checked your temps and pulses? Do you know if your thyroid function is optimal? That's an easy way to check if our thyroid function is optimal. We want to have a high body temperature above 97.8 when we wake up towards 98.6 throughout the day. We want our pulses to be between like 75 and 85. Are you being exposed to something unknowingly? So there are things that just because our periods are normal doesn't mean our hormones are normal, unfortunately. There are a lot of women who have normal periods that have really, really bad hormonal imbalances or issues. And so it's one of those things where it doesn't necessarily tell you anything. But sometimes if you don't know if you're ovulating, there are women that literally, they're not tracking ovulation and they're trying to get pregnant and they're missing ovulation every single month. And so, because they think they're ovulating around day 14, when in reality they're ovulating around day 19 or 21. And so they actually miss it every month. And then, never underestimate that it could not be your body at all. It could always be your partner's body. So that's another thing to think about. Like, don't underestimate the power of sperm being low, sperm count. Is rebounding good for PCOS? Yeah, I think rebounding is good for everyone, honestly. It's such an amazing way to move the lymphatic system, support whole body detox, and also it's a really good exercise that's very low impact. And for people that are struggling with like HPA axis dysfunction or adrenal burnout, they tend to do really good with something like rebounding. And keep in mind, rebounding isn't done by, it's not like jumping on a trampoline. It's literally bouncing and not letting your feet even leave the trampoline. That's how it's done properly. Do you find dairy poorly affects hypothyroid patients? I don't really think that. I think everyone's individual. I don't really care what people have. I think people really get caught up in defining themselves by their disease and forget that they're each an individual. A lot of people do really well on dairy, and actually dairy helps hypothyroidism for them. And then some people don't do well on dairy for whatever reason. And so it just kind of depends on the person. But if you have low free T3 levels, you're going to have a hard time digesting lactose because you need T3 and progesterone to make that enzyme lactase, which helps you break down lactose, the sugar in milk. So some people need to take some digestive enzymes for a while, but keep in mind that hypothyroidism it does not have to be your fate. Hypothyroidism can often be reversed if you do the right things. And so I recommend, checking out my information on thyroid, check out Real Food Gangsters, check out Matt Blackburn. We can fuel a healthy thyroid conversion. If we truly have low T4, there are things that are damaging the thyroid tissue. And if we have low T3, it's a conversion issue, meaning that the thyroid hormone that our thyroid's making, T4, is not converting into T3 in the liver. And that's a liver issue. That's not technically a thyroid issue. How do you balance your minerals? With my clients, I actually use a hair tissue mineral analysis so we can look at their intracellular mineral levels and start working on their minerals based on their actual mineral levels. Because I think a lot of people will implement minerals and not really know what they're doing. They're doing it really blindly, and they end up not feeling worse or not really fixing their issues. And so mineral balancing is actually the process of doing a hair tissue mineral analysis and working on your minerals based on what your minerals come back as. What are your thoughts on high ferritin but normal iron levels? Ferritin is really like an empty storage container for iron. I highly recommend looking into the research of Morley Robbins and listening to maybe a few of his podcasts on iron to really understand that ferritin is a really poor way of measuring anything going on with iron at all. Hemoglobin is a way better measure, is a way better measure of figuring out what's going on with iron. Just ate potatoes, chicken, and veggies. I'm stuffed but still not satisfied. It's like I need something sweet after. What does that mean? A lot of times when we only eat starch with no fruit, we have a very hard time getting that into our cells, especially for insulin resistance. So I usually recommend instead of having a whole potato, having maybe like 2/3 of the potato and then having a glass of juice with that meal, and you're gonna find you feel a lot more satisfied because that sugar is actually able to get into the cell. Why do you think you got this overgrowth of bacteria? Well, when you're stressed out, your transit time sometimes slows down, or if you're not eating enough, or if you are maybe sleeping poorly. When your body's under stress, a lot of times it prioritizes other things and not your digestive tract. And so I've had quite the stressful year, and so it's just kind of a natural effect of being under stress, maybe not taking care of myself as good as I could, and so I need to kind of work on my stress levels now. Are nonstick pans toxic? If so, what kind of cookware would you recommend? Yeah, nonstick is very, very toxic. Really shouldn't be used by anyone. I usually recommend Extrema cookware, and that's what I use. How long should we be rebounding? Sometimes I get dizzy after 2 minutes, not sure why. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to do it longer if you're getting dizzy. A lot of people are very toxic, or their detoxification systems are pretty sluggish, and so they actually need to go really, really slow with all detoxification methods. Tips for getting more vitamin D when sunshine isn't abundant. I highly recommend just getting like a lizard light, like a warming light, like it's just like a red warming bulb you can get in the lizard section at like Petco, and you can just kind of park it on yourself. You don't want it to be too close because it gets really, really hot, but you can kind of park it on yourself. And it's not about getting vitamin D, guys, it's about getting sunlight. So the red light is therapeutic in itself. You need red light to convert hormones. And hormone D, or vitamin D, it's not really a vitamin, it's a hormone, usually will take care of itself. I had high liver enzymes and high estrogen. Last blood test showed both are starting to normalize, but weight not budging. Thoughts? It can just be that you're not, you have other issues going on. If you've had high estrogen, how's your thyroid? Because elevated estrogen suppresses thyroid function regardless of what labs come back as. So do you take your temps and pulses? Do you know that your temperatures are high? Do you know that your pulses are high? That shows a strong metabolism. If not, then that's a sign that, estrogen does suppress thyroid function. It suppresses metabolism. And then how are your stress levels? Are you eating to balance your blood sugar? Are you eating protein, carb, and fat every 3 to 4 hours? Are you eating enough calories, above 2,000 calories? A lot of times we're starving ourselves, we don't realize it, and it's causing weight gain because the body will conserve as much energy and push as much into storage as possible. And that process can sometimes take 6 months to a year, depending on how slow our metabolism has been and how we've kind of starved ourselves in a sense. It can take a long time for our body to switch from that storage mode into that burning mode because it thinks it's going to be in a famine at any point in time because we've been constantly putting ourselves through that famine. I wish I was told about gluten and PCOS. I was told grains were okay and wondering why my symptoms of PCOS persists. Yeah, I don't like grains for PCOS for multiple reasons. Now, I don't think grains are bad. How they are prepared are everything. So if you are eating, for example, if you're eating oatmeal that has gluten on it, that's such a different food than sprouted gluten-free oats. So I don't think grains are bad, but we definitely need to be eating them conservatively because they're not the best source of carbohydrates for PCOS. That's always roots and fruits. Is high MCV and MCH a symptom of low folate or B12? I'm not really sure, and it would be hard for me to answer without speculation, without knowing somebody's whole kind of health history. Different recs for breakfast besides eggs, looking to mix it up. I just had toast with some butter and jam on top, and then a good sized portion of cottage cheese on top of that toast. I'm looking to try, I kind of want to mix it up as well, so I'm going to try. A lot of people are telling me do a little butter, a little jam, and then do liver pate on your toast. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll try that. So I'm going to probably try that soon. And then a lot of times I'll do a big smoothie of frozen fruit, casein protein, collagen, and some OJ or milk, and just make a smoothie really quickly. Sometimes I'll do a sweet potato hash, I'll just shred sweet potatoes or parsnips or both, and then cook up some mushrooms and basil and coconut oil, and then cook the potatoes through. So lots of options. I'm laughing so hard at the lizard light. Yeah, the lizard light is funny because it's a different type. It's the same light bulb, but it's usually a million times cheaper than an infrared light bulb. Dairy bad for those that suffer with hypothyroid? I already answered this question. You recommended topical progesterone for quick fix hirsutism. Is there one you could recommend? Progest E is a really good one. And that's actually made by Dr. Ray Peat, and it's probably the best formulation. But ONA's, ONA''S, progesterone oil and vitamin E is another really amazing one. Yep, so that's kind of the ones that I've personally used. I've used progesterone, the ONA's progesterone oil topically, and let me tell you, it's like a surge of youth into the face. It really is. It's quite the anti-ager. But I was literally looking I was using it every night for a little while, and it was making me look a little bit pink. I was starting to get kind of pink, and I was there's lots of something going on in my face, circulation. It wasn't bad. It was just I looked I was a little girl. When you're when you're a little girl and you got really tired and your cheeks were nice and rosy, that's what I look like. Let's see. Is taking MCT oil every day good for you? I wouldn't say it's good or bad for you. Medium chain triglyceride oil is derived from coconut oil, and so yeah, MCTs are good to utilize, but it's not oh, it's so good for you, you should take it every day. It's more of a thing that I just utilize because it's a liquid form of coconut oil, but that's kind of it's not good or bad. Some people say caprylic acid, which is one of the oils in MCT, is antifungal and antibacterial, so sometimes it can be helpful for gut issues. OMG, how do you feel about Ezekiel bread? Is that okay grain to eat or no? Because it's made with legumes, I think. It's not made with legumes. It's actually made with wheat berries, whole wheat berries. And so I don't know if it's organic or not. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the ingredients in a long time. But all wheat that we consume, if we're gonna consume wheat, should absolutely be organic, because wheat is heavily sprayed in pesticides. And then when it comes to whole wheat, like whole wheat berries, that's pretty hard to digest. So a lot of times these like healthier breads have lots of like seeds and whole wheat and things that are actually makes it hard to digest. So I personally am not a fan of Ezekiel bread, but I'm not as familiar, my dog, I'm not as familiar with the formulation as I wish I was. So I can't really tell you for sure. Is castor oil pack good for PCOS? Yes. Well, I shouldn't say yes, but a lot of times, yes. It tends to be helpful for supporting bile flow in the liver, and it can dilate the bile ducts. It can enhance the immune system. So most of the time, yes, it's a really good thing to practice pretty frequently with PCOS. Do you know why the body would form cartilaginous bone tumors? I had an enchondroma removed, but it came back. I wonder if it's food related. Honestly, I'm not sure, but if there's things going on in the bones, a lot of times it's an iron related issue, because that's where a lot of iron goes, and if we can't utilize iron or we're oxidizing iron a lot, that's going to cause a lot of free radicals and oxidation. So that would be my guess. When my hair falls, I can see the white bulb in the root part. What's that mean in a protocol for adrenal PCOS estrogen dominant? It's showing hair fall. If you're seeing the white bulb, a lot of times that is straight up hair loss, and it's very common with androgenic alopecia. So hair loss is one of those things where it's not an easy fix, and a lot of times it has to do with high stress on the body. So if you there's no such thing as adrenal PCOS. Everyone with PCOS has adrenal exhaustion or stress-driven condition. PCOS is a stress-driven condition, and so if you're estrogen dominant, there's a lot of stress going on there. So I would give it time, as long as you're balancing blood sugar, working on detoxification and things like that. Usually it'll take care of it. But I highly recommend the book Hair Like a Fox by Danny Roddy. My lower legs and feet have been getting itchy in the morning when I stand while I get dressed. It goes away after a little bit. It's so strange. Do you know why that is? What are your temps and pulses like? Do you take your temperatures and pulse right when you wake up? A lot of times things like pain in the feet or issues in the feet can have a lot to do with thyroid issues, especially if it's in the morning. Are your hands and feet really cold? That's a sign that like the circulation and the metabolism is a little low. But it can also be things that you're eating before bed or taking before bed is not sitting well. A lot of times symptoms in the morning have to do with stress, because keep in mind, a lot of people have horrible blood sugar balance. They can't store a lot of sugar in their liver because their liver is so trashed. And so a lot of times by the time that we wake up, we've been fasting for so long that our liver's already run out of sugar. And at that point, we're already, our stress hormones are already through the roof. Cortisol and adrenaline is already making us fuel for the day. Remember, cortisol and adrenaline will always spike if our body is hurting for glucose, because it has to break down our tissues in order to send to the liver to be converted into glucose. Is dairy okay for PCOS? If I found stopping it the best, but now I'm drinking coconut milk and almond milk. What is best? Almond milk is horribly toxic, so I don't think people should be drinking almond milk. Remember, PCOS is an estrogen-driven condition, so you don't want to be eating a bunch of phytoestrogenic foods. But coconut milk tends to be okay as long as it's, just straight coconut milk. Make sure you're looking at the ingredients in your milks, because coconut milk is not technically milk. Almond milk is not technically milk. They're not milking it from something. They're processing it into a milk-like substance. And so just be very wary with what is being put in your mouth, because a lot of the ingredients actually cause a lot of inflammation. And almonds should always be organic. There should never be carrageenan or guar gum or locust bean gum or synthetic vitamins in our milks. Thoughts on taking amino L-glutamine powder every day? My old naturopath had me on it for repairing the stomach lining from stress. I'm not as big of a fan of L-glutamine as a lot of people. There have been some signs that elevated L-glutamine in the gut or glutamic acid can actually drive like colon-based cancers. And so that's not to like scare. I know the C word really scares people, but it just kind of shows that it might not be all it's cracked up to be. Now, I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I don't take any supplements long term unless they're food based. They're not synthetic, they're not processed in the lab, because truly, how do you know? Just because a study says that something's okay does not mean it just is okay. So it's one of those things where you have to kind of be smart about supplementing long term. Sorry, the dogs go crazy. The dog loves to be in my office until he hears a sound. So it's one of those things when it comes to synthetic supplements, or especially being reliant upon them long term, you have to just be really careful. And even though everyone's doing it, I think a lot of naturopaths and functional medicine doctors will just say like, well, I learned this protocol, or somebody told me that this is good for gut healing. And I'm like, but have you looked at the effects, the long-term effects, the chain reactions that could happen in the body? Or have you been around long enough for someone to take this long-term to know the effects? Usually that question is no. So I really like gelatin or very glycine-rich foods for supporting the stomach and the mucosal barrier. You can get grass-fed gelatin by Great Lakes on Amazon. You can drink bone broth for gelatin, cook oxtails for gelatin. Just gelatinous foods in general are going to be really helpful for healing the stomach and the mucosal barrier. And that's great for gut health as well, truly. I just waved at somebody, sorry. So yeah, any other questions? I'll kind of do a last call. I know you guys always ask, but when it comes to any issues, guys, we need to stop relying so heavily on supplements and start really focusing on our habits as medicine, especially our food. A lot of people are relying so heavily, and it's popular right now to rely so heavily on plant fats and plant foods these days, but they are eating too many raw vegetables, or eating too many beans and grains, or especially eating way too many nuts and seeds is highly inflammatory. It's very irritating to the gut, and the fats that you're being provided are not superior to ghee and grass-fed butter and coconut oil. And so a lot of people are struggling with these mystery issues and not realizing that their diet that they think is so healthy is actually contributing, because they're relying so much on all these processed foods that they think are healthy or plant-based, but in reality, they're just processed foods nonetheless. What do you normally order when you go out to eat? I'm so scared of stuff like canola oil that I tend to avoid restaurants now. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's not about being scared. It's about wanting to be body honoring. We have to kind of look around us and see that the modern world is not for our health. It's very much against our health. And so I very regularly cook at home out of pleasure and delight, meaning that I can control what's in my food. I worked in the restaurant business when I was a teenager and early adult, and I think that I very rarely eat at restaurants because restaurants are disgusting, and they're only focused on their bottom line, and so that gives them the incentive to give you the cheapest, nastiest food as possible without getting you sick. So just think of it that way. It's like restaurant business is a profit-driven business, and the quality of the food is very subpar, and the oils that they cook in are very subpar. Now, with that being said, it's okay to just go out and enjoy food from time to time, but maybe opt for something like a burger that's lettuce wrapped instead of like a chicken tender, you know what I mean, that's been fried in oils. So it's just, you kind of just choose smart, I don't avoid polyunsaturated fats at all cost. There are times, like usually on Friday nights, me and my boyfriend will go out to like Five Guys, or we'll go get a burger and some fries, and I enjoy it. I don't really care. I just take vitamin E and let my body do its thing, but the majority of my diet is saturated, so I don't really stress about it. What are your thoughts on myo-inositol for PCOS and ovasitol, trying to better my diet? Here's the deal, guys. I hate questions, and I don't mean this like in a rude way. I just mean like we don't ever ask questions, myo-inositol for PCOS. Are you PCOS? I didn't know your name was PCOS. You're PCOS? Stop identifying yourself by PCOS. Everybody's condition is driven by a different issue. You are your own person, so what do you need to balance your body? Sometimes myo-inositol can be helpful for women who struggle with symptoms of PCOS. We have to understand why. Myo-inositol is a sugar alcohol that can actually manipulate the microbiome to make you a little bit more insulin sensitive. Sometimes women with PCOS are deficient in vitamin B8, and so supplying that vitamin B8 in the form of inositol can be helpful. But if they're not deficient in vitamin B8 and the manipulation of the microbiome is not enough to help them, myo-inositol will not help their symptoms at all, because PCOS is a much bigger issue, and our goal is to first focus on nutrition. Second, focus on proper exercise, which is almost always strength training for women with PCOS. We need to be lifting weights and lifting heavy weights. We need to make sure we're getting sunlight seriously. Like, do not overestimate the power of underestimate the power of sunlight. We need to make sure we're prioritizing our sleep and getting ourselves out of a stressful environment. And seriously, stop drinking alcohol. Make it a very infrequent thing. Like, if I was going to say one thing to better our lives, stop relying on alcohol, both for our mental health and our physical health. Hell yes to the highly inflammatory plant foods. I was vegan for a year and it's destroyed my skin. Still working on healing on it. Yeah, I know. It really sucks because a lot of people think that like a plant-based diet is anti-inflammatory, and in fact it's so much. Could you do a story on what supplements to take, when, and how much? No, I can't, because I don't know you and I don't know your situation. Supplements are specific to the individual, and the goal is to get our body to a balanced point where we don't have to rely upon supplements at all. The only 3 supplements that I think everyone should take is magnesium, grass-fed beef liver, and vitamin E. By the way, thank you for all the info you provide and always answering so many questions. You're awesome. Of course. Thank you so much for all your information. Oh, I love you guys. Loose stools, not diarrhea per se, but break up easily, perhaps just need more fiber. Sometimes when we make shifts to our diet, our stools can be loose. Did you implement any new supplements? Did you change your food at all? Usually like adding in an apple in the morning on an empty stomach can help with that. Just having a little bit more raw carrot. Sometimes mushrooms that are really, really well cooked. No one has really helped here in Canada. Sorry, it's so frustrating. No, it is frustrating, and I just kind of want you guys to see your condition in a different way. We need to stop defining ourselves by PCOS. PCOS is not the problem. It is a development of the problem. PCOS started 10 years before we ever got diagnosed, 15 years, 20 years, because it was a metabolic problem that continued to get out of control and out of control and out of control until we were actually diagnosed with a syndrome. PCOS is a metabolic problem and actually has very little to do with our ovaries, but the metabolism has gotten such out of control and our cells are so sick that it's actually affecting our ovaries and our hormones. And we need to get back to the root cause. We need to make sure we're eating frequently, we're eating enough, we're eating the right foods. We need to make sure we're laying the foundation of health and then getting our mineral levels back to balance. So magnesium is so important, potassium is so important. High quality sodium is so important. Even calcium rich foods are so important. And we have to make sure we're getting a variety of nutrients in our diet so that we're not wanting for nutrients like selenium and iodine. And all of these metabolic issues, think of like a cell that doesn't have what it needs. It starts to spiral out of control and spiral out of control until your whole body is sending weird cellular signals, because that's all hormones are. Hormones are literally how the cells talk to each other, how they tell each other to start doing something or stop doing something. And if our hormones are in disarray, our cells themselves are in disarray. When do you tie in your raw carrot salad into your day? I always forget about it. Usually I'll do it as like a mid-morning snack. And even if I didn't like work at home, I would still do it as a mid-morning snack because I think it's kind of easy to just like eat it while you're at your desk. And even if I'm not really that hungry for it, I'll just do it anyways. It's even better done on an empty stomach regardless. So I usually just will try to fit it in mid-morning. But if I don't, then I'll do it like mid-afternoon. I was looking into taking grass-fed beef liver, but I didn't want to supplement blindly. LOL, is there one you could also recommend? I just do like a high-quality one. Like I like Ancestral supplements. There's a one called, what's it called? Nutricology is another good one. Just anything that's like a high-quality, like New Zealand beef or a grass-fed beef. That's going to be a good one. But yeah, whatever one you can get your hands on, that's pretty high quality. I personally take Ancestral supplements just because I like their brand. You are so inspiring. Thank you for opening our minds. Of course, I like to encourage women who have PCOS to just think a little deeper, because a lot of times we're getting so concerned with the fact that we have PCOS that we forget like we are an individual person with individual needs, and we continue to define ourselves by PCOS. And there's all these pages that prey on women. They are that's why I never wanted to put PCOS in my name, in my handle, because I didn't want women to define themselves by PCOS. And so many pages these days are like, here's what to eat for PCOS, here's what to take for PCOS. And I'm like, last time I checked, my name's not PCOS. My name's Jessica. And I have symptoms of PCOS, but my symptoms of PCOS are so different than that girl's symptoms of PCOS. So why am I treating myself the same? And in reality, PCOS is so misunderstood. It actually makes me sick to my stomach sometimes. There's so much misinformation out there. And it's ending up hurting women, or they'll end up switching their diet over to, like, for example, low carb or keto, and they feel good for a little while, and then they feel worse because it didn't fix their issues. In fact, it was symptom suppressing. So now their issues are worse than they ever were before, and they have no idea because they think like, oh, this is just PCOS. And I'm like, now you have literally horrible HPA axis dysfunction, thyroid issues, you've diluted and depleted all of your minerals, and so now your metabolic issues are worse, and all in the quest for trying to change them because somebody told you low carb was best or keto was best. And it's like, no, you have to stop focusing on PCOS and focus on the root of the issue, which is a cellular problem. You should seriously be a doctor. The world needs people like you helping their issues. You know what's sad is if I became a doctor, I wouldn't be able to help people how I need to. And that's the most unfortunate thing, is the system is not set up for people to be helped by doctors. In fact, doctors are only rewarded if they get a patient really quick, see them for 15 minutes, and then bye, see you later, and then prescribe them medicine. That's the only way that doctors can make it in the world. And keep in mind, people should be their own self-healers. Doctors can't heal you. And I think that sometimes we go in thinking our doctors are some kind of god, or our doctors are like some all-knowing person because they went to school for 10 years, and so we entrust them with our health. And I'm like, no, take that health back into your own hands. You are your own doctor, and you always will be. Don't ever be confused about that. You are the one that makes decisions for your body, and you are the one that day in and day out makes the choices that actually determine the direction that your health goes. And so I don't feel like being a doctor would fulfill me in the way that I thought I used to, but I was going to be a doctor. That's what I was going to do. I missed one day of progesterone pill, and I was back to 40 days on my period. However, I'm going to keep taking it to make my period regular. I've been binge watching your YouTube videos. Thank you. Of course, I love that you are enjoying the Q&As. I can't wait to actually start my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for all the information you give us. I haven't gotten fully nourished yet, but even without it, you've helped me so much. Yeah, of course. I always appreciate you guys. Do you have a story highlight on the danger of keto diets? My friends are obsessed with keto, and I'd love to show them. I'm going to do one soon. I'm just always like, just like veganism, keto has kind of become its own like religion. And I know that when I go and do a story, I need to really sit down. A lot of times for like the stories that I know are going to be a little bit more controversial, I have to really sit down and like plan it out and do my research and provide studies, and I haven't gotten around to doing that yet, but I totally will. Thoughts about V's and all the anti-V's community. Sorry, I can't even say the word because I'll get censored, but I just think people should do their research. That's all I'm gonna say about that, because I don't want to get censored. Is organic popcorn inflammatory? Make it with organic coconut oil and sea salt. That really depends on the person. There are certain things like corn, for example, that some people can't handle any corn, and some people do really okay on corn. My only advice would be to chew it really well, because it is kind of like a harsh, it can be really hard on the gut, and that's going inside the body. So it is a little bit more on the rough side, and so it's just a good idea to make sure we chew it pretty well. But most people do okay, especially if it's cooked in the right fat and it's cooked really well. But yeah, I love myself some good popcorn. All right, guys, Instagram's giving me about 2 minutes, so I'll finish answering any questions that come up. I'll do a last call for questions, and then if nothing comes in, I really appreciate you guys spending your time with me this morning. I'm going to go through and try to answer some questions today that you guys submitted in the Q&A box last night. And yeah, let me know if you guys need anything. But yeah, I am working on, there's a few things I'm working on. So I'm redoing my website right now. I'm getting a lot of resources available for you guys so that you can have free downloadable resources and get signed up for my email marketing list. I want to be able to send you guys newsletters every week. I know you guys really like when I send out like research studies and just things that I'm reading or things that I'm enjoying, and so I'll continue to do that. And then I will also be starting my YouTube channel coming up pretty soon, so that's exciting. What is the best magnesium supplement? Usually magnesium bicarbonate is a really good internal magnesium. Magnesium glycinate is really, really good. And then externally, like a good transdermal magnesium, like a magnesium oil, I really like Life Flow magnesium oil, or Epsom salt baths are always a really great way to get magnesium. But yeah, I hope that was helpful.